I expected a modest reward. Instead, they gave me an alien vampire princess. The pulsar was trying to kill Marcus Hale, and it was making a solid effort. He yanked the control bar hard to the right as another wave of electromagnetic energy rolled through the ship. Every panel on the bridge lit up red. The Iron Lament, a mid-sized salvage freighter that had seen better decades, groaned in a way that sounded personal. "Radiation levels rising," said Chip, the ship's artificial intelligence, in a voice of complete calm. "Hull temperature at 62% of critical. Also, your coffee tipped over." "I see that," Marcus said, pulling the ship level again. "Distance to the beacon. 400 meters. I estimate a 40% chance we reach it before the next electromagnetic pulse. And the other 60%. We do not." Marcus pushed the throttle forward anyway. He was 29 hours into a contract that had been listed as high risk at the lowest pay grade the salvage registry allowed. A distress beacon, active but unresponsive, was transmitting from inside one of the most dangerous pulsar fields in the outer zones of Galactic Council space. 3 separate rescue teams had entered the field before him. All 3 had turned back. Their filed reports all carried the same language: unacceptable risk to personnel. Marcus had read every one of those reports on the flight in. Then he had flown in anyway. His reasoning was not complicated. He had no crew to risk. Chip did not feel radiation. The salvage claim on any ship recovered from this field was worth enough credits to cover 3 months of operating costs. And Marcus Hale had a rule: if the math worked and the ship could take it, the job got done. The beacon was coming from a Vethka warship. Even half destroyed and drifting sideways through a field of lethal radiation, the thing was impressive. The Vethka built their ships the way other civilizations built monuments: long, angular, dark, with the kind of deliberate weight that said we have been here a very long time. This one had been cracked open somewhere near its center. Whatever had hit it had done so without mercy. "Boarding window in 20 seconds, Chip said. "Recommend full radiation suit. Also recommend not doing this." "Noted on both counts," Marcus said. He docked with a magnetic clamp that complained loudly about it, suited up in under 90 seconds, and moved through the airlock before the pressure equalization finished. Inside the Vethka ship, the darkness was total. His helmet light carved a narrow white path through corridors lined with carved symbols he had no time to study. The floor tilted at a 10-degree angle. Broken equipment hung from the walls like vines. "Beacon source is 31 meters ahead," Chip said through his earpiece. "Then down 2 levels. Radiation exposure at current rate will reach biologically significant levels in 7 minutes. "I need 5, Marcus said. He moved fast. 11 years in the outer zone salvage trade had turned him into someone who moved through broken ships the way other people moved through familiar rooms, quickly, with attention on the right things, and without wasted motion. He dropped through a collapsed floor section, landed in a crouch, and turned his light toward the far wall. The stasis pod was there. It was the size of a large standing wardrobe, built from dark Vethka composite material, and pressed tight against the wall under 3 layers of collapsed ceiling beams. Its power cell was still active. A soft blue light pulsed from a strip along its base, slow and steady as breathing. Marcus pulled out his plasma cutter. The ceiling beams were heavy. The first one took 90 seconds. The second one took a full 2 minutes because one end was welded to the wall by impact heat. He cut it free, dragged it aside, and cleared the last layer of debris with his hands. His suit's environmental readout ticked upward steadily. 4 minutes, Chip said. "Stop counting," Marcus said. "It helps neither of us." He locked a tow cable onto the pod's base ring, standard Galactic Council specification, he noted, which meant at least part of the hardware was universal, and ran the cable back through the corridor. Then he pulled. The pod shifted, then it moved. He backed through the ship at a near run, the cable over his shoulder, the pod scraping along the tilted floor behind him. His arms burned. He did not stop. He got the pod through the airlock with 43 seconds left on his exposure window. The magnetic clamps released. He was back in the pilot's seat before the airlock finished cycling. "Thrusters," he said. "Already prepared," Chip said. The iron lament pulled out of the pulsar field with the kind of speed the ship's manual described as strongly inadvisable. The rear shields lit up white from a final electromagnetic burst, and then the field was behind them, and the dark quiet of open space was ahead. Marcus sat back and breathed slowly for a moment. "Pod is secure in cargo hold," Chip said. "Aft hull has minor scoring. Coolant leak detected in Bay 3. This is a new leak, not the recurring one. Salvage manifest claim submitted. Estimated payout, 41,800 credits." "Close enough to 42, Marcus said. "Course to Council Station 14. He did not think much about the pod during the 4-hour journey. Stasis pods appeared in wreck sites with some regularity. They usually held cargo or personal effects. Occasionally they held a survivor, which came with a separate recovery bonus. In any case, the pod was sealed. Its occupant, if there was one, was stable, and there was nothing he needed to do before docking. He was wrong about the last part. The moment the iron lament's docking clamps connected with Council Station 14, every blast door in the docking bay sealed simultaneously. A full unit of armored Council security officers appeared from 3 different corridors at the same time, weapons not raised, but hands not relaxed either. Every officer was looking at his cargo hold. The communication screen activated without Marcus touching it. The alien on screen wore formal gray robes and the expression of someone who had just been informed about a very serious problem that was absolutely not his fault and absolutely was now his problem. Marcus did not know his name yet, but he would shortly learn it was Admiral Thavrin, Senior Diplomatic Liaison for the Galactic Council's Outer Zone Division. "Mr. Hale," the Admiral said, in a voice carefully arranged to sound calm, "please step away from the cargo hold." "I was in the pilot's seat," Marcus said. "Then please remain there." The Admiral paused. His outer eye membrane flickered. "The pod you recovered, we have identified it by its registry signal." "Good. Does that speed up the payout?" "Mr. Hale," the Admiral leaned slightly forward, "the pod contains Princess Sareveth Nulkine, heir to the Vethka Dominion. She has been declared lost for 200 years. Marcus looked at the cargo hold door. He looked at the Admiral. "Does that affect the salvage rate?" he asked. The Admiral made a sound that existed somewhere between a response and a breakdown. The holding room was small, clean, and entirely without personality. Marcus sat on a bench along one wall, working through a protein bar, while the political situation outside apparently entered a full crisis state. He could hear it through the door. Not words, but the particular kind of organized rushing that happened when large numbers of important people all needed to be somewhere at once. Footsteps in multiples, voices overlapping, the distant sound of someone giving orders in a language he did not speak. Chip's voice came through his earpiece. "You have received 14 communication requests in the last hour. 12 are from Vethka diplomatic channels. 1 is from Galactic Council Legal. 1 is from a news agency that I have no idea how they obtained this frequency." "Decline all of them," Marcus said. "Done. You have now received 15 communication requests." Marcus finished the protein bar and looked at the ceiling. He had been in holding rooms before. The Galactic Council liked holding rooms. Anytime a human contractor did something the Council had not anticipated, which was more often than the Council publicly acknowledged, they were placed in a holding room while the relevant departments decided what the appropriate procedure was. Marcus had spent, across his career, a combined total of 9 days in various Council holding rooms. He had started keeping a small book with him for exactly this reason. The door opened. Admiral Thavrin entered, followed by two assistants who each carried a data tablet and the look of people who had not slept recently. The Admiral sat down across from Marcus, with the careful movements of someone approaching a situation that could go in several directions. "I want to explain the current legal position," the Admiral said. "Is it going to take long?" Marcus asked. "Possibly. I have a book." The Admiral looked at the book. Then he set his data tablet on the table between them and began. The Vethka Dominion, he explained, was one of the oldest and most politically significant civilizations in the known galaxy. Its ruling class had held power for over 4,000 years. Its laws were ancient, detailed, and treated with the same reverence that younger civilizations applied to foundational scientific principles. One of those laws concerned the life debt. If a member of the Vethka ruling line was preserved, rescued, or retrieved from death by an outside party, a life debt was established between the rescued and the rescuer. This debt was binding, non-transferable, and could not be settled by any form of currency. The only acceptable resolution was a price named by the rescuer, a price that the Dominion's cultural code required to be worthy of a royal life. Marcus listened to all of this carefully. "So what you're saying," he said when the Admiral finished, "is that I cannot be paid in credits." "Correct. And instead I receive. The princess will be bound to you as her life debtor's ward until you name a worthy price." The Admiral's eye membrane flickered rapidly. "This is a position of considerable cultural weight. No non-Vethka has ever held it." "I want 40,000 credits and a new coolant manifold," Marcus said. The room went silent. One of the assistants stopped typing on his tablet. The other looked at the Admiral. The Admiral looked at Marcus with an expression that suggested he was hopping, very much, that Marcus was making a joke. "The coolant manifold is about 800 credits, Marcus added. "I'll take that separately." "Mr. Hale," the Admiral said slowly, "there are 14 Vethka ambassadors on this station right now. There are 6 Vethka warships in the surrounding space. The Dominion's first diplomatic seat has been transmitting to this station every 11 minutes since the pod was identified. What you are describing is not a price. It is an accounting error. It's what the job is worth." The job involved retrieving the heir to an interstellar empire. "The job involved a plasma cutter and a tow cable," Marcus said. "I have the receipt." The Admiral placed both of his hands flat on the table and breathed carefully. Before he could respond, the communication screen on the room's far wall activated on its own. An aide appeared on screen, looking slightly frightened. "Admiral," the aide said, "the pod is opening." Everyone in the room looked at the screen. Marcus stood up, because the screen showed a live feed of the docking bay's auxiliary chamber, and the stasis pod was indeed unsealing. Frost spread outward from the seam as the pressure equalized. The door opened slowly. She stepped out. She was taller than any human Marcus had seen. Her skin was the color of pale silver in low light. Her hair was dark and long. Her eyes, when they opened fully, were the deep, still red of something ancient and quiet. She wore the remains of a Vethka military uniform, pressed and precise even after 2 centuries in a sealed pod, as though even unconsciousness had not dared to wrinkle it. Every council officer in the room with her took one step back. She did not look at any of them. She looked at the camera. Then, in a voice that was low and deliberate and carried the weight of several centuries of practice, she spoke. In human English. Old-fashioned human English, with the careful pronunciation of someone who had learned it from recordings. "I am told," she said, "that a human pulled my pod from the wreck." Nobody answered her. "I would see this human," she said. Marcus looked at the Admiral. The Admiral looked at Marcus. She has been monitoring Galactic Council communications for approximately 150 years, the Admiral said quietly. We believe she learned 37 languages during her time in stasis. Human English was among them. Marcus nodded slowly. Well, he said, that's something. He was taken to the auxiliary chamber 2 minutes later. The officers who had been in the room with her had reorganized themselves so that none of them were within 6 meters of her. She stood in the center of the room with her hands at her sides, watching the door with complete stillness. When Marcus walked in, she studied him for a long moment. He studied her back. You are very small, she said finally. I hear that a lot, he said. You smell like burned metal and recycled air. That's the ship. I've been meaning to address the ventilation. She was quiet for another moment. Something moved in her expression, not quite a smile, not quite contempt. Something in between, or possibly something that had no human equivalent. I will permit you to live, she said. Thank you, Marcus said. Chip, file for the manifold reimbursement. Chip's voice came through his earpiece. Already submitted. Also, you have 17 communication requests now. Nobody told Marcus how to explain a ship's kitchen to an 800-year-old alien princess who had never needed to prepare her own food. He figured it out as he went. This unit produces heat, Sierra said, standing in front of the cooking panel on the third morning, studying it with the focused attention of someone examining a foreign artifact. It's a stove, Marcus said. You put food on it. I do not require cooked food. I know I'm making breakfast. You can watch or not watch. She watched. She stood in the corner of the small galley with her arms crossed, observing every step with the expression of a researcher taking notes. When he placed a plate of scrambled eggs on the table and sat down to eat, she tilted her head slightly. You eat 3 times each day, she said. Roughly. And sleep for 8 of your planet's hours. Sometimes 7, depends on the job. During which time you are completely defenseless. Marcus looked up from his plate. Are you going to stand there every night while I sleep? I already have been, she said. He considered this for a moment. That's either very thoughtful or very unsettling. It is neither. You are my life debtor. If you die before nomming a price, the debt is unresolved. That is unacceptable. Right, Marcus said, purely practical. Entirely. She turned and left the galley. Chip, who had been listening from the overhead speaker as he always was, waited exactly 2 seconds before speaking. She stood outside your bunk for 6 hours last night, Chip said. I have the corridor sensor data. I didn't ask, Marcus said. I am aware, I told you anyway. Life on the Iron Lament had reorganized itself in ways Marcus had not anticipated. Sierra took the secondary cabin without being invited and without asking permission, which he chose not to address because the secondary cabin had been used mostly for storage, and she had moved everything with a tidiness that was actually an improvement. She did not eat his food. She did not interfere with ship operations. She did not sleep, at least not in any way Marcus could detect. What she did do was appear in doorways. She had a particular habit of standing in the doorway of whatever room Marcus was working in, the bridge, the engine room, the cargo hold, in complete silence, watching, not threateningly, observationally, like a scientist who had found an interesting specimen and was not yet ready to write up conclusions. On the 4th day, he was halfway through recalibrating the navigation computer when she spoke from the engine room doorway. Why do you do this work? She asked. Salvage. You are capable, she said. Your actions in the pulsar field demonstrated problem-solving, physical competence, and a willingness to accept risk that most species would refuse. You could occupy a more significant position. I like working alone, Marcus said, and I like knowing that what I earn is mine. She was quiet for a moment. The Vethka respect self-sufficiency. I know, I've read your public records. You researched my people. You're on my ship, it seemed reasonable. He looked up. Also, you've been studying me since the moment you woke up, so we're even. Something moved at the corner of her mouth, not a smile, adjacent to one. On the sixth day, two armed individuals boarded the Iron Lament. They came through the service airlock during a scheduled docking stop at a supply station, a gap in security that Marcus immediately noted as something he needed to fix. The first indicator was Chip's calm announcement: two unscheduled bodies in the lower corridor, armed, moving toward the bridge. Marcus was already in the corridor with a stun baton before Chip finished the sentence. The two individuals were Vethka, not soldiers. Their body language was wrong for soldiers. They moved like people who did a specific kind of work that required them not to be identified. One of them raised a weapon that Marcus recognized as a Vethka neural disruptor, a device designed to incapacitate a target by interrupting neurological signals. Sira appeared from the side corridor. She said something in Vethka that Marcus did not speak. Whatever it was, both individuals turned toward her, and then she moved. He had not seen her move quickly before. Watching it now, he understood why the council officers had stepped back. She crossed the corridor in under 2 seconds. The first individual's weapon hand was controlled before the trigger was touched. The second moved to assist and found that Sira had already turned in a way that placed the first individual between them like a barrier. It was over in 8 seconds. Both individuals were on the floor, breathing but still. Marcus looked at them. He looked at Sira. She was standing straight, expression unchanged, not breathing hard because he was beginning to understand that she did not breathe hard. "Noble faction," she said. "They have been watching for my return." "The people who profited from your disappearance," Marcus said. "Yes, they would prefer I remain disappeared." He zip-tied their hands with equipment cable, called the station's security office, and had them removed in 12 minutes. Then he went back to the bridge and pulled up the navigational chart for the Vethka Dominion's capital system. Sira followed him. "You are plotting a course to the Dominion," she said. "I was always going to," Marcus said. "That was always where this was going. The sooner you reclaim your seat, the sooner the people who want you gone run out of reasons to keep coming." "They will keep coming," she said. "The noble faction has held power for 2 centuries. They will not release it without resistance." "Then we move fast," Marcus said. She looked at the chart on the screen. She looked at him. "You are navigating toward one of the most politically dangerous situations in the known galaxy," she said, "for a debt settlement." "For a coolant manifold," Marcus said. "Don't oversell it." Chip's voice came from the speaker with its customary timing. "There is also a secondary coolant leak now. Bay 4, new one again." "How many coolant systems does this ship have?" Sira asked. "Technically 6, Marcus said. Practically about 2. She sat down in the co-pilot seat, the first time she had used it, and looked out at the star field ahead. Marcus adjusted the course and set the autopilot. "Tell me about the noble faction," he said. "If I'm flying into their territory, I want to know what I'm flying into." And she told him. For 3 hours, as the ship moved through quiet space toward the most dangerous political arena in 50 light years, she talked. Not like someone reading a briefing, like someone who had been storing information for 200 years and had finally found a person worth giving it to. Marcus listened to every word. The Vethka capital world was called Vethan, and it made Marcus feel like he had flown into a painting made by someone with very specific opinions about darkness. The planet's surface was covered in oceans so deeply colored they appeared black from orbit. Above them, cities rose on rock formations lit from within by a deep red light that pulsed at irregular intervals, like a heartbeat that was also an architecture. "It is more impressive from the ground," Sira said, standing behind him at the viewport. "I'll take your word for it," Marcus said. He was not given much time to form additional opinions about the scenery. Within 40 minutes of entering Vethan's orbital space, an escort of 6 Vethka warships had formed around the Iron Lament in a formation that was technically an honor guard, and technically also a box from which departure would be difficult. They were taken to a docking platform near the High Obsidian Court, the seat of Vethka legal power, a building that looked like it had been constructed from the skeleton of something enormous and very old. Marcus was informed, politely and with great formality, that he was expected to appear before the court within 3 hours. He was also informed, less politely and with equal formality, that the noble faction had already filed a legal challenge against the life debt. Their argument was simple. A human could not hold binding legal claim over Vethka royalty under Vethka law, because humans were not a recognized party within the Dominion's legal framework. He was further informed that the last non-Vethka to stand before the High Obsidian Court had been removed from the proceedings in a manner that the filing described only as with finality. Marcus read that section twice. "Chip," he said, back on the ship, "I need everything you have on Galactic Council commercial contract codes, specifically sections covering cross-jurisdictional salvage rights and intercivilizational legal recognition." "Downloading now," Chip said. "May I ask what you are planning?" "I'm going to make an argument before the most senior legal body in Vethka civilization." "Yes, a body that has dissolved litigants before. You mentioned that." "I am mentioning it again," Chip said, "for emphasis." Sierra appeared in the doorway of the bridge. She had changed into Vethka formal wear, dark, precise, with the kind of tailoring that said this is not a costume, this is armor. She looked at him across the room. "You do not have to speak," she said. "I can argue the life debt validity myself." "They'll expect that," Marcus said. "They've had 200 years to prepare arguments against you. They haven't had a day to prepare arguments against me." She considered this for a moment. "And what argument do you intend to make?" "The honest one," he said. The High Obsidian Court was exactly as intimidating as its name suggested. The chamber was enormous, built from black stone that absorbed sound and returned it slightly altered, so that voices carried an unnatural weight. The presiding elders, 7 of them, all ancient enough that their silver skin had taken on a faint luminescence, sat in a raised semicircle. The noble faction's legal representation occupied one section of the floor, a team of 12 who had clearly spent weeks preparing. Marcus occupied the opposing position alone. He had brought a data tablet. The noble faction's lead representative, a tall, sharp-featured Vethka named Counselor Rathvale, opened the proceedings with precision. His argument was thorough, technically detailed, and built on 400 years of established Vethka legal precedent. The core claim was two-part. First, that the life debt as an institution applied only to interactions between Vethka parties. Second, that salvage recovery, a commercial act, did not constitute the kind of personal intervention that the life debt was designed to recognize. He spoke for 22 minutes. When he finished, the presiding elder looked at Marcus. Marcus stood up. "I want to talk about a concept," he said, "called theft." Rathvale's composure flickered for just a moment. Marcus laid out his argument in 3 parts. First, under Galactic Council Commercial Code, Section 41, Paragraph 9, any object or occupant recovered from a derelict vessel by a licensed salvage contractor becomes the legal responsibility of that contractor from the moment of recovery. This responsibility was recognized by every signatory to the Council Charter, of which the Vethka Dominion was one, having signed 312 years ago. Second, the life debt was not a Vethka-exclusive institution. He cited 3 historical cases, all from Vethka legal records, all available on the public registry, in which the life debt had been applied to non-Vethka parties. In each case, the Dominion had upheld the debt as valid because the law was built on the principle of obligation, not species. Third, The noble faction's argument, if accepted, would mean that the Dominion was claiming ownership of a matter already assigned to another party under a separate and equally valid legal framework. Under both Galactic Council law and the Vethka Dominion's own historical legal decisions, that was not a legal challenge. That was an attempted appropriation of something that belonged to him. On his ship, he put the tablet down and looked at the presiding elders directly. "I pulled that pod out of a pulsar field that 3 other teams turned back from," he said. "I did it legally, on a valid contract with a licensed vessel. What the noble faction is asking this court to do is to take something I recovered and reassign it. Under any legal system I'm aware of, that has a simpler name than what they've called it here." The chamber was very quiet. Rathvale stood. "The human has no standing in this court to make claims of." "He has standing," said the presiding elder, in a voice that ended Rathvale's sentence immediately. The elder looked at Marcus with the careful attention of someone who had not found a proceeding interesting in a very long time. "Continue, Mr. Hale." Marcus looked at Rathvale. "I'm done," he said. "That's the argument." The court deliberated for 31 minutes. When the presiding elder returned to the chamber, her expression was composed and her voice was final. The life debt was valid. The noble faction's challenge was denied. All assets and titles held by the noble faction's core members pending investigation of their conduct during the princess's absence were to be suspended immediately. Rathvale did not respond. He was already being escorted from the chamber. Sierra stood at Marcus's side as the room cleared. She had not moved or spoken during the entire proceeding. Now she looked at him sideways. "You cited our own legal records against us," she said. "They were public records," he said. "You read Vethka public legal records." "I had a long flight." She was quiet for a moment. That was, by Vethka standard, the most aggressive act of territorial legal defense I have witnessed in 4 centuries. "Good," Marcus said. "Let's go name a price before someone files another challenge." The inner chamber of the high obsidian court was smaller than Marcus expected. After the grand theater of the main hall, it was almost plain, a round room with a low ceiling, a single light source in the center, and chairs arranged in a circle. The presiding elders took their seats. Sierra stood at one side of the circle. Marcus stood opposite her. Every transmission channel in the Dominion, he had been told, was carrying this live. The presiding elder spoke. "Marcus Hale, human citizen, licensed salvage contractor. The life debt established by your recovery of Princess Sareveth Nulkine is affirmed and recognized. You are invited to name your price. The Dominion will hear it." Marcus reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He had written the list the night before, alone in his cabin on the Iron Lament, while Chip kept careful quiet and the ship hummed through the dark of Vethan's orbit. He had written it 3 times. The first 2 versions he had thrown away. The third one he had kept. He unfolded it. "3 things," he said. "The first is a formal treaty, co-signed by the Vethka Dominion and submitted to the Galactic Council, recognizing human salvage contractors as a protected commercial class. Full legal standing, enforceable across every jurisdiction that acknowledges either the Council Charter or Vethka law. No more gray areas. No more jobs that disappear from the registry when they're done. No more work that gets claimed by larger operators because humans don't have the standing to fight back." The elders were writing. "The second is a full repair and refit of my ship. I don't want a new ship. I want mine fixed by your engineers using your materials to a standard that reflects what the job was worth. Every system, including the coolant." A quiet, involuntary sound came from one of the junior officials near the wall. He had clearly been expecting something grander. Marcus did not look at him. "The third is a new voice module for my ship's AI. The current one has a crackle in the mid-range frequency. It has bothered me for 2 years." He folded the paper and put it back in his pocket. The inner chamber was completely silent. Not the uneasy silence of people waiting for something else. The still silence of a room in which something unexpected had just occurred, and everyone present was still working out what it meant. The presiding elder looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then she looked at Sira. "The life debtor has named his price," the elder said. "Princess Saravith, do you receive it?" Sira was looking at Marcus, not with the studying expression he had seen so often over the past several days. Something different. Something that had less analysis in it and more recognition, like looking at something and finally understanding what it actually was. "I receive it," she said, "and I add to it by my own authority a standing open pass for Marcus Hale into Vethka space, permanent, unconditional, under my personal protection for the duration of his natural life." The elder acknowledged this with a formal nod and began speaking in Vethka to the other elders. Marcus looked at Sira. She did not look away. "You could have asked for anything," she said, her voice low enough that it was for him and not the room. "I asked for what the job was worth," he said. "The job was worth the heir to an empire. The job was worth 42,000 credits and a new coolant manifold," he said. "The treaty is for the other contractors, the people who do what I do in ships like mine, without anyone to argue their cases in places like this. That's the part that needed fixing." She was quiet for a moment. The Vethka cultural code considers the protection of one's people above personal gain to be the highest expression of the warrior instinct. "I'm not a warrior." "By our definition," she said, "you have been behaving like one since the moment we met." He did not have a response to that. He looked at the elder, who was completing the formal record, and then back at the middle distance while he thought about what to say. "The pass into Vethka space," he said eventually. "You didn't have to add that." "No," Sira agreed, "I did not." She walked past him toward the chamber's exit, and as she passed she said, without stopping, "The engineers will begin on your ship in the morning. I expect the crackle in your AI's voice will be corrected within 2 days." Chip, through Marcus's earpiece, said, "I am choosing to interpret that as a compliment." The treaty was filed with the Galactic Council before the end of the day. The Vethka legal team transmitted it with a covering note that was, by diplomatic standards, extremely brief. The Galactic Council's Outer Zone Division received it, reviewed it, and after 4 hours of internal discussion during which Marcus ate 2 more protein bars in yet another holding room, ratified it with the kind of speed that indicated they had been waiting for exactly this kind of documentation for a long time, and were relieved it had finally arrived. Human salvage contractors across the outer zones would know about it within the week. Marcus did not expect anyone to thank him, and he was fine with that. The iron lament came out of the Vethka refit yards 3 days later, and Marcus walked through it twice before he said anything. Every panel matched. The engine ran without the disappointed cough sound. The coolant systems, all 6 of them, showed green across the board. The hull plating was even. The airlock sealed without grinding. The secondary cabin, which Sira had apparently considered hers since the first day, and which the engineers had therefore restored along with everything else, smelled faintly of something mineral and cool. He sat down in the pilot's seat and ran the full system check. "Everything passed." "Chip," he said, "test the voice module." "Operational," Chip said. "Clean, no crackle." Marcus leaned back. "How does it feel?" "I do not experience sensation," Chip said. "However, my audio output quality has improved by 43%, which I find structurally satisfying." "That's basically feeling," Marcus said. Sira came aboard without announcing herself, which was already a habit. She passed through the bridge doorway, looked at the new panels and the clean controls, and sat down in the co-pilot seat without comment. She had changed back into simpler clothing, not the formal wear of the court, something closer to what she had been wearing when she first stepped out of stasis. She looked less like a princess and more like a person, though Marcus suspected she would remain formidably both at all times, regardless of what she was wearing. He dealt the cards. Sierra looked at the deck. "We are playing again," she said. "Every flight," Marcus said, "house rules." She picked up her hand and studied it with an expression of complete neutrality. Marcus studied his. He had 4 cards that worked well together and 1 that did not. He kept all 5 and gave no indication of which was which. 3 minutes later, Sierra laid her hand down and it was better than his. He looked at the cards, he looked at her. "You cheated," he said. "Yes," she said, with no hesitation at all. "How?" She said nothing, which was its own answer. He gathered the cards, shuffled, and dealt again, outside the viewport. Vethan's black oceans reflected the stars below them. The Iron Lament's new engines ran at a smooth, even hum. Chip plotted the outbound course without being asked, because after enough time, a good AI learned what came next. "Where are we going?" Sierra asked. Marcus looked at the star map. There were at least 4 salvage beacons in the outer zones that nobody had answered yet. 3 of them were in locations that other operators would consider too risky. One of them was in a debris field so dense that the registry listed it as non-viable. He set course for the non-viable one. "Work," he said. Sierra nodded once, as if this was exactly the answer she had expected and had perhaps already decided she approved of. Chip said, "Departure in 4 minutes. Also, I want to note for the record that this is the best I have sounded in 6 years. I consider that significant." "Noted," Marcus said. He pushed the throttle forward, and the Iron Lament moved out of orbit and into open space, clean and whole, and pointed toward the next thing, which was, as always, precisely the kind of thing that no one else was willing to do.